General Hospital spoilers will reveal. The latest revelations from General Hospital paint a troubling portrait of Britt Westbourne as she edges closer to a dangerous line, driven by a mixture of desperation and stubborn determination. Her refusal to heed Lucas Jones's warnings reflects not only her growing obsession with reclaiming control over her medical fate, but also the widening gulf between caution and recklessness that now defines her choices. Despite Lucas's attempts to anchor her, Britt seems increasingly willing to gamble with risks that could spiral far beyond her intentions, revealing a woman who feels cornered by both science and time, and who believes that only bold defiance can save her. In recent developments, Britt proposed a startling and deeply unsettling plan that highlights the extent of her desperation. Her suggestion to incapacitate Pascal with sodium pentothal to obtain the treatment vial underscores how far she is willing to go to dissect the medication that may hold the key to her future. This idea was not made lightly. It came from a place of mounting fear that she may never fully understand the therapy being administered to her. The thought of reverse engineering the formula represents her last grasp at autonomy, a need to reclaim ownership over her body and her illness, even if doing so requires skating the edge of criminal behavior. The plan's logic, in Britt's mind, feels brutally simple. If she can render Pascal unconscious before he administers her routine dose, she can secure the vial and analyze its components without oversight. She imagines this moment as her breakthrough, an opportunity to dismantle the secrets surrounding her treatment and potentially rebuild her future. But the clarity she feels is clouded by the danger she refuses to acknowledge. A single misstep could expose her, harm Pascal, or cause irreversible consequences in her own health. The tightrope she walks grows thinner with every calculation she makes, and yet she clings to the belief that boldness is her only path forward. Lucas, however, sees the situation through a far more rational and experienced lens. He dismisses her plan not out of fear, but out of an acute understanding of the catastrophic outcomes that could follow. To him, the idea of carrying sodium pentothal openly, ready for use, is not a sign of preparedness, but a flashing red warning. He urges Britt to discard the syringe, recognizing it as a symbol of a descent into dangerous thinking. Where Britt sees opportunity, Lucas sees inevitable disaster, understanding that one impulsive decision could jeopardize not only her prospects for recovery, but her freedom, her reputation, and her already fragile emotional state. Ultimately, the tension between Britt's desperation and Lucas's caution sets the stage for a looming calamity. If Britt continues down this perilous path, the threat of disaster feels less like a possibility and more like an approaching certainty. Her determination may propel her toward action she cannot take back, and the consequences could reverberate through every aspect of her life. As the shadows surrounding her choices deepen, the story hints that the collision between her resolve and the risks she refuses to acknowledge may soon erupt into a crisis far more devastating than she anticipates. Britt's determination to take matters into her own hands becomes far more understandable when viewed through the growing complications surrounding Marco Rios. Although Lucas had hoped Marco would serve as a stabilizing ally, someone who could quietly and safely obtain what Britt needed without resorting to drastic measures, the reality proves far more volatile. Britt senses that the support Lucas promised cannot be delivered, not because of unwillingness, but because the situation has evolved beyond anyone's control. Her urgency, fueled by fear, and the diminishing timeline of her illness makes her more inclined to act independently when the cracks in their plan begin to show. Despite Marco's initial agreement and his apparent sincerity in wanting to help, GH spoilers reveal that he soon encounters a significant hurdle, one that neither he nor Lucas anticipated. Marco enters the situation believing he can navigate it cleanly, relying on his instincts and his ability to remain unnoticed. Yet he quickly discovers that the environment surrounding Britt's treatment has become heavily monitored, with Pascal's suspicion creating a tension that makes every move feel dangerous. The confidence Marco once had begins to erode as he realizes that this mission will not be as straightforward as Lucas hoped. Pascal himself now becomes a central obstacle, amplified by the distrust he holds toward both Lucas and Marco. His awareness has sharpened, and he no longer assumes innocence in the actions of those around Britt. When Marco attempts to retrieve one of the treatment vials from the last known storage location, Pascal's sudden appearance shatters any illusion of secrecy. His probing questions, silent but heavy with accusation, forces Marco into a defensive position. The simple act of looking in the wrong place at the wrong time becomes a potential turning point, raising the stakes in ways Marco had not prepared for. Pascal complicates matters further by revealing that Britt's medication has been relocated, refusing to disclose the new storage site. This withholding of information transforms the retrieval mission from difficult to nearly impossible. Marco, already shaken by Pascal's presence, is left with no safe path forward. His role shifts from active participant to helpless bystander, bound by the tightening grip Pascal has placed around the entire operation. Whatever confidence Britt and Lucas had placed in him now feels fragile, threatened by forces that Marco cannot overcome through determination alone. Ultimately, Marco returns to Lucas carrying not a solution, but an admission of failure. His confession that a serious problem has arisen, one rooted in Pascal's interference and strategic secrecy, marks a critical moment in the unraveling of their plan. For Britt, this revelation confirms her worst fear. The window of opportunity is closing, and relying on others may no longer be enough. For Lucas, Marco's admission deepens the anxiety already taking root, signaling that Britt may soon push forward on her own, propelled by desperation into territory too dangerous to predict. As the situation grows increasingly untenable, Britt inevitably finds herself turning toward Jason Morgan as the only person capable of stepping into the chaos with the strength and precision she desperately needs. His presence offers a stabilizing force, yet it also underscores the depth of her frustration as every plan before him collapses under pressure. Each failed attempt, every complication involving Pascal or Marco, weighs heavily on her, creating a mounting sense of urgency that makes her feel trapped in a labyrinth with no clear exit. While Jason represents hope, she cannot escape the disappointment that so much has already spiraled beyond her control before he even has the chance to intervene. This emotional and strategic pressure pushes Britt toward a disturbing crossroads, forcing her to question whether she should resurrect her earlier idea using sodium pentothal to neutralize Pascal. The temptation grows stronger as the obstacles multiply, leaving her with fewer options and even less time. In her mind, the logic of the plan becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. If the writers highlighted her possession of the drug and Lucas's objections so prominently, it suggests that the narrative may be steering her toward a moment where she feels she has no choice but to act. The line between impulsive risk and calculated survival grows dangerously thin as Britt contemplates the next steps in her fight for control. If Britt chooses to move forward, the next encounter with Pascal becomes a pivotal moment. She may prepare herself mentally and physically, anticipating his routine visit and attempting to create the exact conditions she needs to incapacitate him. In her imagination, she envisions a brief window in which she could strike first, win the upper hand, and finally secure the treatment vial she believes can change everything. Yet, beneath her determination lies a quiet, unnerving awareness that Pascal has proven unpredictable, resourceful, and increasingly suspicious. Her plan, while bold, rests on the fragile hope that he will not be prepared for her. However, Pascal is not the same man he was before Anna Devane exposed his vulnerabilities. That experience hardened him, sharpened his instincts, and dismantled any complacency he might have once relied upon. He now approaches every interaction with heightened alertness and a readiness to respond to even the slightest deviation from routine. Britt may believe she can catch him off guard, but Pascal's renewed vigilance creates a dangerous imbalance. Instead of becoming the victim of her plan, he could easily become the predator who sees through her intentions before she even acts. This reversal of power could culminate in a moment that neither Britt nor Lucas anticipated. Pascal subduing Britt and administering the sodium pentothal meant for him. Such an outcome would plunge the storyline into a darker, more psychologically intense direction, exposing Britt to vulnerabilities she never imagined. Under the influence of the drug she once considered her weapon, she could be forced into revealing secrets, fears, or information that endangers not only her survival, but Jason's involvement as well. The very tool she believed would grant her freedom may instead become the catalyst for a new wave of danger, tightening Pascal's hold over her and propelling the narrative toward even higher stakes. Below is the expanded version in 6 detailed paragraphs written in English with no dialogue, no title, and rich, continuous narrative flow. I have included entity references for the characters as required. On the other side of this unfolding crisis, the possibility remains that someone like Lucas Jones or even Carly Spencer could arrive at precisely the wrong moment while quietly monitoring Britt's increasingly unstable situation. Both have reasons to worry about her safety, and both understand the volatility surrounding the medical treatments she is receiving. It is easy to imagine one of them following a hunch or responding to an uneasy instinct, only to stumble upon a scene far more chaotic than they ever expected. Their sudden presence would inject another variable into an already fragile equation, turning what Britt hoped would be a controlled confrontation into a dangerous and unpredictable struggle. Should either Lucas or Carly witness a physical altercation involving a syringe, their instincts would drive them to intervene. Neither would simply stand by and allow Britt to risk her life or someone else's. But their involvement could worsen the chaos rather than diffuse it. A sudden attempt to stop the struggle might cause Britt to lose control of the needle or shift her focus at a critical moment, giving Pascal the advantage she desperately hoped to avoid. The tension, the adrenaline, and the unpredictability of every movement would create a scene where rational decision-making disappears, leaving only reaction, fear, and survival guiding the outcome. In such a frantic environment, the possibility rises that Britt's syringe could strike an unintended victim instead of Pascal. A single misdirected thrust could turn someone like Lucas or Carly into a sudden casualty, incapacitating them instantly and creating a horrifying complication. That accidental victim could then be dragged either by necessity or by force to a place like Windermere, transforming them into an unwilling hostage caught between Britt's desperation and the escalating hostility of Pascal or those working behind the scenes. A single mistake could shift the narrative dramatically, turning an attempted act of control into a crisis with far-reaching consequences. Meanwhile, the darker forces surrounding this storyline remain active and observant. Individuals such as Ross Cullum or the far more dangerous Jen Sidwell could intervene the moment Britt acts against Pascal. If she manages to inject him successfully or accidentally, there is every chance that one of these men will appear immediately afterward, catching her mid-crime. Their presence would erase any illusion that Britt has gained the upper hand, trapping her instead in a scenario where she is now the perpetrator in their eyes. Such a moment would place her in extraordinary jeopardy, with no straightforward path to escape. Being discovered by Ross or Sidwell would push Britt into a deeply precarious position. Rather than gaining control over her treatment or her future, she would be thrust into the hands of individuals whose motives oppose her survival. They could exploit her mistake, using it as leverage to manipulate her, isolate her, or silence her. The consequences could extend far beyond the immediate danger, potentially dismantling her relationships, her medical autonomy, and the fragile trust she has clung to throughout this ordeal. Every step she takes draws her further into a labyrinth of threats, where every wrong move tightens the snare closing around her. Ultimately, the latest spoilers from General Hospital make it clear that Britt's backup plan is destined to collapse under the weight of its own risks. Whether her failure comes from outside intervention, unintended injury, or discovery by one of the show's more sinister figures, the path before her is lined with ominous possibilities. Disaster appears not as a distant threat, but as an approaching certainty, signaling that the storyline is about to descend into even darker territory. What begins as a desperate attempt to reclaim control may soon transform into a cascade of consequences that Britt cannot escape, setting the stage for devastating developments ahead.